Now, it is once again that time of the week for the Monaghan Way Podcast, episode 17. It's been a busy couple of days on the podcast front there. Maybe you caught some of them. We have, of course, Aidan Morgan in episode 15, previewing and looking to the hurling championship. And we will have some reaction from that from my guest, Fergal Monaghan, shortly. And hope you caught the one there at the weekend. It was a special podcast, 16, and what a special one it was. Catching up with Darren Hughes, of course, as he called an end to his 19 years in the county jersey. And we had a lovely afternoon in the company of Darren out at the Kilmore training grounds in Scottstown. Got to see round them, and a wonderful chat with Darren. So check that out. And all our other previous podcasts is there as well. Plenty for you to listen to, and there'll be plenty for you to listen to over the next 30 plus minutes or so, because as I said, Fergal Monaghan's back. He had a sabbatical, he had a break there. We're going to say that, Fergal. You were at the hurling, you were at the small ball game last weekend covering it for us here on Northern Sound. So you were, and maybe just briefly on those, as I mentioned, we talked to Aidan Morgan on the run up to these. A couple of surprise results, I have to say. Firstly, I must note Latin. Well done. First time finalists in the junior final. They overcame Clonturbert, a club that's only back up and going. I know they've been there in previous years, but back up and going only in the last 5 years as a senior club. They've been in development leagues, took the bigger step this year just to go up into the senior, junior competitive end of things and into that final against Monaghan Harps. And then it's going to be Castleblaney and True in the final. And you're covering both of those. Castleblaney doing what Castleblaney do, I suppose. They're the kingpins.
Yeah, and I didn't mind stepping aside, absolutely, for a great man like Darren, wishing him well. We'll miss him in the county jersey, and it's been well. I spoke about it at length as well, and great guy. So absolutely no problem standing aside for a legend like that. It was a brilliant episode last week, Sean. So well done to both of you on that, and well done to Darren on a brilliant career in the Monaghan jersey. Still going well in Scottstown as well. We'll talk about that shortly. But come to the hurling. I was in Monaghan, in Gavin Duffy Park in Monaghan Harps for the two matches. Castleblaney, quite interesting. Castleblaney, Fergal Rafter and goals. I know he's struggling with a few injuries and everything. So, he's doing it one end 1 year. He's in the goals the next. Kept a clean sheet. Carrick only scored 6 points, but they probably looked a little bit devoid of confidence. And Blaney just kept that scoreboard ticking over. They had the breeze. We keep talking about wind. It seems to be the windiest country in the world, because every weekend we're talking about breezes and second half, and it'll make a difference. Blaney didn't make any difference. They scored 13 points to 3 up at halftime with the breeze, and they scored another one, whatever. They scored 122 in total. So the second half against the breeze made no difference whatsoever. In fact, both teams through the same scored their goal against the breeze. Castleblaney, big spread of scorers. Leo Maloney was very good on the frees with long distance. Thomas Hughes was there. They really were excellent throughout. They had, Niall Garland as well. That half forward line was so dangerous. A big spread of scores, not relying on one person to do the bulk of the scoring, and that will make them fairly formidable. If they come out of Monaghan, which they're hot favourites to do. So Blaney, and I was talking to Kevin Maloney, their manager, after, and he was very happy with them, the way, they've got a kind of a balance about the team. Like, they are missing lads as well from previous years, but there's just a solidity about them. There's a variation of scores. They've got danger throughout, and they played within themselves, Sean. They didn't, I certainly think there's a couple of more gears in them as well. So Carrick will be disappointed. It just didn't look maybe like they really, believed, in the sense that I always remember that county final where Inniskeen beat Blaney, and real underdogs that day, but the hunger was there, and it wasn't just there for Carrick, and Blaney just snuffed it out. They kept that scoreboard. You never got close enough, and you never made it. Carrick didn't make themselves a nuisance for long enough to be in any threat to Blaney. But the other game, kept you thinking right up until the end, where Inniskeen went in as favourites. I was speaking to people who knows a lot more about the matches than me, and following Monaghan hurling, and Inniskeen were favourites for this. But one thing, and we talk about it all the time, True, Antonio Hagan talked about it as well, the hunger that the True men showed was incredible. And they had David McCarville and a few lads there, just really, really, Matthew Flood as well, really good, long distance, but they were powerful, big, strong men. And the other thing I noticed at halftime, when the subs were out doing their warm-ups and pucking the ball around, True actually had at least 15 or 16 lads on the bench as well, which is a testament to what the club are doing, and the interest that they have in hurling. And they got the rewards. They're in it by merit. That goal was the difference between the sides. It felt Inniskeen pushed and prodded and probed for the end in the injury time. They had the breeze in the second half, but they couldn't get that elusive 2 point. There was a 2 point lead, and it was the true men who got the last point. And they were delighted with themselves. I was talking to their manager, Tony, after, and I was asking him about, what, nobody ever thinks of the commentators, Sean. I was like, what's the story with the numbers? Because there was 24s, there was 28s, there was 27s. And I was wondering about that, the changes and the tactics. He says, no, we we let everyone pick their favorite number, which is it's something that I don't want to see going on in the future. But it worked out for every man because they deservedly made the final. Inniskeen probably were looking for Niall Arthur, to be their focal point. And sometimes they actually look for Niall when he wasn't in a better position, when the player in possession could have went for the shot, but they actually looked for Niall, and it didn't come off. And he was excellent, as he always is. He accounted for probably, out of that 12 points, I think 9. He might have got 8 or 9. So, he was excellent, as he always is. But that idea of always looking for it kind of nearly acted against Inniskeen at times. So, true, it was a great day for them. They'll be delighted. But, they'll be going in as severe underdogs against Blaney. But it's been done before. But, it'll take a big effort. Like, it'll be a brave man to tip against Blaney in that final.
It certainly will, yeah. And it was interesting. I was listening to your piece with Tony O'Hagan afterwards, and I was smiling. In fact, I messaged you about the jerseys, I think you and on me, allowing it. My first train of thought was, what if two players had the favourite same number? What was going to happen in that case then? So,
well, who the manager prefers. That's a laugh in there.
Well, that's true. I'm wondering, will other managers take this up now and say, right, boys, there's the bag of jerseys, pick whatever numbers you fancy there, and away we go.
The only other fear I ever saw was the Arsenal white jersey, the away jersey, where the numbers are white, and I just considered no consideration for the poor commentator at all.
Yeah. And I was going to say, that's a podcast for another day. You've been there, you're commentating. I've been there, been commentating. There's lots of ones out there commentating. And it's the one thing can get you at times is the jersey with a hoop or a stripe in the middle of it and the number on the back. And there's certain clubs or there's certain counties when you go to commentate on them, your first worry is, oh Lord, I'm not going to be able to see these numbers, or they're very hard to distinguish.
Well, you have to, Sean. You're a lot more experienced in the game than me, but you have to commit to the mistake. When you make it, don't say anything. Just commit to that lie and stick with the person you said. Particularly on the radio. Thank God there's no pictures. That's all I can say.
Absolutely. We can say what we want, and maybe more often than not get away with it as well. So it does make for a very interesting senior final, and it must be, as I said, acknowledged there at the start as well. Latin into that junior final as well, and credit where credit's due. Fergal, again, the likes of Latin, they come in, as I said, as a seventh club this year into the senior competition, and the way it's split then, those quarterfinals, and you drop down into the junior competitions. And I would have been talking to Gabriel McQuillan, Jason McAndrew, and a few of the guys that was up there involved in it. The numbers are low, they would admit to that, but they're committed.
Well, that's it. And I was talking to Jason McAndrew myself at the match on Sunday, the double header, and he was absolutely delighted. A commitment. And one thing, all clubs, and you have the privilege, as I do, of going around to these different clubs now with the way the championship format is, and clubs are doing brilliant work. But I have to say, like, Latin are a really committed club, and it's fantastic to see a country club that's out that direction on its own, doing such work and having such a commitment to the club that you can get the numbers to play hurling, because it is difficult at times in Monaghan. There's no doubt about it. But they got the rewards, and I mentioned it. The hunger, the commitment shown by True in the second game, it's hard to beat it. Whatever organisation you can do, but getting everybody to buy into it, that was the trick. And I suppose it's great incentive and a great motivator for Latin now that they got a reward for their hard work, that they can see that there's something to be got out of it. Sometimes you put in all the commitment and you put in all the hard work and you don't really get anything. So it's a great Jason absolutely was delighted as well. He was absolutely delighted. Meant so much. That's the thing sometimes. We go to the senior games, Sean, with the championship, and we don't get to we can't get, because the games are at the same time. You can't get to intermediate or junior games, but what it means to teams, irrelevant of the competition, that feeling of winning, that feeling of succeeding, and it's a great privilege to see it. But it's a massive achievement for Latin, and particularly for the work that goes into getting something off the ground. It's not easy.
Not easy. No, indeed it's not. And it's not going to be easy this weekend. Background senior competition. Your predictions are going to reflect back on your previous predictions. Again, it's something that's been noted to me here. But Fergal, he gets some of them right, some of them he's getting wrong. And I noted even myself listening back to one particular podcast, I says there's a presidential campaign on at the moment. Fergal Monaghan could be throwing his name in the hat because he's the best man I ever seen to give an answer and give you nothing at the same time, because I was listening back on a few.
Well, Sean, you're interviewing all the managers like I am, and we get. I've been working with the best after the matches. You don't get much of any lads. Or it's a tricky game.
It's the best thing to ever do. Give an answer and give nothing at the same time. That's what I always say. But your predictions, just from what we had to where we're going into, Scottstown against True, Carduff against Cromartin in that opening group. I know I was at the Scottstown True game. You took in the Carduff Cromartin game. Scottstown coming off the back of their draw in round one against Clontibbert, going up against True, who had suffered a heavy defeat against Carduff, but had won their opening game against Cromartin. This one going down to the wire, and 2-pointers. And as I've listened again, and you've been pointing this out, 2-pointers are now playing a bigger and bigger part and role in these games. And obviously it was Max Maguire back-to-back 2-pointers to bring the game level, and Rory Beggan doing what Rory Beggan does. He opened the game with a 2-pointer and he ended it with a 2-pointer.
It's some weapon to have, and actually it's becoming, I said that the first round, wasn't a factor. It was a bigger factor in the next round, and with the way and the time of year we're heading into, it's going to be even a bigger factor because I don't want to hark on about breezes and stuff like that. It's not that big, but it is a thing for a 2-pointer. There's no doubt about it. And the club game is now catching up with the county. How many times did we talk about Monaghan being unsuccessful in the league when they didn't hit their 2-pointers? When they hit those 5 2-pointers, they were generally winning games. The only game they didn't was that Roscommon game in the Dr. Hyde Park, and they only hit one that day. And it's the same. Even Ballabay and Annamullen, there was 8 2-pointers in that game that I covered. And the problem with the podcast is you can play it back, you can remember our predictions or lack of. But I actually thought Annamullen might beat Ballabay. I think they were when we come to that was the biggest story of the weekend for me, was the way Ballabay bounced back from all their injuries and really put in a performance. But that 2-pointers, like Rory Beggan, God, he's going to be important in this championship for Scottstown. They are finding it. Teams are closer to them than they ever were, but there's still 3 out of 4 points for Scottstown. And Gary Mohan being back was a big asset for the true men, but the 2-pointer was a big thing. And when you think about it, Sean, a goal is 3 points. A 2-pointer, you can get a 2-pointer, you can squeeze up in a kick out and get another 2-pointer in quick succession. 4 points turnaround. It's such a massive incentive. And I wonder, even though we are getting plenty of goals, it's not affecting the goal tallies. There's no doubt about that. But I do wonder, will they make the goal worth more in the future? It's hard to know, but that's a story for another day. But yeah, the 2-pointers, and True will be massively disappointed. And it's such a funny championship. There's no real correlation between one weekend to the other. Like True were terrible against Carduff and got a really hard, heavy beating. And you'll be thinking that's them done in the championship. But they had to come out, and they must be really, really heartbroken not to have got something out of that game, because they really led for nearly the whole game, bar the last kick of the ball. And they did equalise it. They went down with an equaliser, and then obviously the Rory Beggan with the score. But it's a hard one to take for them. But they did show serious character to really rise up and that. But it's hard to beat Scottstown. We lauded Clontibbert for that draw, but they didn't beat them. And it's hard to beat the champion, and they're still in it, and they're building nicely. But True will be so disappointed. There's no doubt about that. A local derby, and it's difficult to beat Scottstown. But they had to take something out of the fact that they were so close. There has to be something out of that. But the management are going to have to get the players to see that. And of course, we're coming into the business end of the championship now as well. It's getting every game now is you're going to be sucked into a relegation, or you have to get a victory. So they have 2 points on the board against Cromartin, so that's important. So they're still in it. But that, if they can turn it around mentally, that defeat still shows some great, promise for True, which they didn't show against Carduff, but they showed again. So, you're not a bad team overnight. So it's an interesting championship in that, Sean, that the teams can sometimes be terrible one week and can really bounce back the following week.
Yeah, and there's nobody really is taking control of this group now. You could argue Clontibbert possibly, and I know they're top of it at the moment, and they're actually taking on True this weekend. They had the bye last weekend, and then obviously the weekend off, so they had the 2-weekend break there. Carduff Cromartin, Carduff coming off the back of that comfortable win that they had over True. And again, we noted down that we thought Carduff would be, dare I say, comfortable going into Cromartin. I noted to you when I last talked to you that James McEnany was at pains to say it's never easy to go down to Cromartin and get a result. And they were discovering that for the majority of the game until the red card, Barry Kerr, and again, the 2-pointers, Jordan McGarrell coming in at the end there and getting the important scores.
Yeah, look, that game, you got to put that in context. Cromartin were leading 2-7 to 1-3 at half time. They actually went 2-8 to 1-3 up at the beginning of the second half. They had more scorers. I mentioned that, Stephen Rooney needed more help on the scoreboard. He got it because he was well marshalled, but he was still brilliant. And Barry Kerr was sent off in the 14th minute. And of course, Carduff had the breeze at their back as well. And then it was a real difficulty because Jason McGee and Jordan McGarrell, and I want a special mention to Jordan McGarrell. I think he's really shown good form. But it just became telling, the spare man and the position that Barry Kerr was playing. He was playing midfield. The crack started appearing and Cromartin ran out of road. But, with 3 minutes of normal time remaining, it was a draw match. So Carduff won by 6 in the end. But it was a real battle. And that's the thing about Cromartin. There was serious spirit. And I was talking to Frank Fitzsimons, their manager, after, and he never cribbed or cried about, the decisions or, going an man down, I should expect. He just took the defeat. So he was a very refreshing interview in the sense that he didn't make any excuses or anything like that. But I did think Cromartin would be tough. But it's amazing, as I say, coming back of that heavy win for Carduff. But they grounded out. They got their win, and they'll be happy with that. They're in serious position here in this championship. Like, they're in a quarter final, and it's not over for them yet. Cromartin will feel unlucky. They're just, of all the teams that aren't winning games, Sean, Cromartin are playing the best. That's definite. There's no doubt about that. They're losing, but they're losing. They're dying with their boots on. They're giving it everything, and even you couldn't fault them. And they were very unlucky against a tough Carduff team. And let's be honest about it, I think Carduff are second favourites for this championship. See, this Carduff team, they're hard to beat, and they're very well organised, and every man's working for them for each other. And they take it a game at a time. So Cromartin, just unlucky. It's what can you say? The sending off was a big factor in the game, but Carduff are in good shape now, and Cromartin, well, it's not over for them yet, but it's a real struggle, now, because you're running out of road. You need to start getting some wins.
You do indeed. And I know they're playing Scotstown this weekend, and I should clarify, it's actually Carduff is top of that group, 4 points, Clonturber on 3, Scotstown on 3, Truth of 2, and Cromartin at the bottom of that table, then still awaiting, as you said, them first points. And the games this weekend then is Scotstown against Cromartin. It's a trip for Cromartin down to Park Wirra, and it's Clonturber coming back in after their bye, and then the weekend off last weekend, taking on True. So the two teams that really need the results here are True and Cromartin. Wins for Scotstown, Clonturber, and you're effectively looking at who's going to be quarterfinals, and then just placings nearly going into that last weekend.
Yeah, the question is, True, how did he react to that defeat? They had the extra week off. Clonturber will be happy that, speaking to Desi Moan about last year when they were flying in the group and had that bye and then had their break, so they waited quite a while for their semi-final. That won't happen to them this year if they make a semi-final or if they top their group. This one is at home in Clonturber. Clonturber have a freshness about them, and they have been playing well. There's no doubt about that. And they are only on 3 points, as you say there. So, it seems that Clonturber are out in front, but they're not top of the group, as you say, Carduff are. So, True. Look, the motive was there, the motivation, the jeopardy, everything is there. True has to put in a performance. But Clonturber at home, with the freshness that they're showing, they're managing their players well. This week, the breaks for Conor McManus and the legs. But it's the other players that I'm so impressed with Clonturber. The spine of their team is excellent. They have a great goalkeeper, Darren McDonnell. You have your full-back, you have Killian Lavelle, you have Conor Boyle. Now, I'm not talking about these, but they have great assets on the wing. You have Jack Gormley going well. You have Francie Hughes in the midfield area going well. Brian Greenan going well. Centre half forward, then, Darry Hughes and Aaron McCary going very well. And then Conor McManus and the legs in there. And you've Desi flying as well. He can come in and play a part. They've experience and they've youth. Young Charlie Moon making a big impact. He's a big name going forward, a famous name, and he's playing well and playing minor as well. But so Clontarf are very, very well placed. They just need to keep that freshness, keep that motivation. The only thing is, you'd have to say it's hard to know what to expect from True, Sean, in the sense that I was expecting great things. And the fact that you're playing back my predictions makes me even more nervous whenever I say anything here, but I expected great things against True against Carduff. I thought they'd really put it up to Carduff with the win they had against Cromartin, and they didn't. But after that defeat, they obviously put it up to Scotland and should have got a victory. So what True are going to show up against Clontarf? I know Clontarf are going to be Clontarf, and I know they're going to perform well. It's just a question is, are True going to match them? And it's hard to know. They're quite unpredictable at the minute. And how will they react to that heartbreaking defeat? There's a lot of positives out of that defeat, but will they see them? That's the question. And will they take that on board when they come to Clontarf? I just think Clontarf at home is going to be very, very difficult. And I think Clontarf have a real sense that the whole championship, Clontarf would always back themselves, but I feel there's a freshness about them. And I feel that this championship is wide open. And I think they can really feel a win here. They'll want to get straight into a semi-final. There's no doubt about it. And that might, I think that will give them the insight. I think Clontarf are favourites for this game, and rightly so. So I'm not going to tip against Clontarf at home. I'd have to say, with the way they're playing, and they also, Sean, are very, consistent this year. Very consistent since the championship started. You're getting performances out of them. They're also creating goal chances, running off the shoulder, a lot of finishers. So I'm going to go with Clontarf to win this one. But I just don't know what True are going to do. If True show up and can play like I know they can play, well, then this one's going to the wire. But if they don't bring that 100% game, well, they're not going to win the game. That's the way I feel about it.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. The bigger want maybe on them, but you said Clontarf there wanting to ensure they get that quarter-final place and let them be top of the group or second in it. Scottstown, Cromartin, and again, it's interesting you said it, of the teams that are losing, Cromartin are playing the better football. But this is the county champions, and this is a team, as you said, they don't know how to lose. A draw, a win taken from the jaws of defeat, back home again. You'd envisage this is another 2 points for the defending champions.
Scottstown at home, it's so difficult, and they'll keep that scoreboard ticking over. As you say, they're adding Max Maguire, they're adding lads in. I know they have injuries, Ryan O'Toole and Conor McCarthy, and that's a big thing, and it will be a big deal at the end of the day when we get to the real business end of semi-finals and finals. But I think Scottstown and David McCaig will be delighted in the sense that they're being talked down. And I mean that we're not, we are aware that they're favourites, but they're winning in a sense. They're not blasting teams away. They're not winning by 10 points. There's questions being asked. And I think he'll use that to focus the lads. And they're like a world champion boxer. They mightn't be going their way, but their ringmanship and they know their way around, and they know how to win the tight games, the tight fights, they'll win on points or whatever. So look, I think Scottstown will beat Cromartin. I just think they have too much firepower all around, and they're at home. And I think Cromartin are unlucky that they're going into this game on 0 points because, they have been unlucky in that sense, but they're going up against the county champions. And whoever Scottstown were playing at home on Saturday at 6:00, I'd be tipping Scottstown. So that's just the way it'll be.
Yeah, it's hard to look past them. The other group, it's interesting. As I said, it's a little bit more straightforward than this one because you have 2 teams out on top now, 3 wins from 3. They're putting a perfect record on the line this weekend, and that's going to be Latin taking on Enniskeane, and the other game is Maracloon taking on Ballybay. So a top of the table clash and a relegation clash. 2 games with real bite in them this weekend. Ballybay taking on Armullen. You noted yourself there at the start. That was one of the big results from round 2. So it was, or round 3, because we're going into round 4 this weekend, isn't it?
Yeah.
Was that victory of Ballybay when it looked like everything was against them, and to pull that one out over Armullen? I know, again, it was a home game for them, but a fantastic result. And it is sort of put just their noses above the water. There's a wee bit of breathing space for them there all of a sudden, because another positive result this weekend over Maracloon, who suffered a defeat against Enniskeane, and Ballybay will be heading to knockout football.
Ballybay, I have to hand it to them, Sean. I really felt Anna Mullen were going to win that game because I just couldn't see where Ballabay were going to come back after how they performed in the first game against Inniskeen. But they absolutely were brilliant. Their half-back line was fantastic. Colm Lennon, 3 points from play from half-back. Ryan Wiley was excellent. Owen McCarney was excellent. Owen Carney was excellent. Um, Christopher McGuinness played well. Shane McGuinness started, went off though. They reckon it's precautionary with a hamstring injury. But they really controlled the game from start to finish, Sean. And what they did was when Anna Mullen did attempt to get back in the game and had a mini revival, Ballabay were able to keep that scoreboard ticking over and keep that gap just enough that they were comfortable. And I thought it was a brilliant performance. I think Anna Mullen have a lot of soul searching to do now. I think they're in a bad place after that defeat because they really needed to win that one. They're 3 losses from 3. But Ballabay going in against Maracloon. Maracloon have lost their 2 games. And against Inniskeen, against Latin, they probably performed better, but they haven't scored a goal in the championship yet. And they were scoring goals for fun in the league. And what I'm noticing is, Sean, they're playing the ball off the shoulder, but they're playing it very far out. They're struggling to get by the defender to get inside that 20-metre line, 21-metre line to create the goal chances. Now, they did create 2 goal chances against Inniskeen, but they were shepherded out towards the right-hand side, towards the Paddy O'Rourke stand in Inniskeen, and the angle was tight to hit the side netting twice. And Inniskeen were very, very comfortable against Maracloon. So Maracloon's lack of goal scoring at the minute would be worrying. They're a very good footballing side, but they're a little bit light in places, and maybe they're just not getting that, man to stand up, score 5, 6, 7 points to where and Anna Mullen are struggling too because they're looking for Neil Bannigan to do that, and if he's been held at all, they're not getting enough scores from other places. So Maracloon have a big game against Ballabay. They gave Ballabay a good beating in the league, but the league is absolutely no bearing on this championship. But Maracloon are at home. They need to fight. They need to create some goal chances. But I think both sides, Ballabay, Maracloon, and Anna Mullen, can all beat each other. There's no doubt about that. But Maracloon now, they're a young outfit. They have a good management team with Damien Feeney, Eamon Hughes, their coach. They have a good setup there. They're going to have to get the boys to dig deep now and say, right, things were going great when you were in the league. We were winning all. They've now lost 2 on the bounce. So now it's time to really get something out of themselves. Their confidence will be a bit low with those 2 losses. But in fairness, they're up against the 2 top teams in the group. There's no doubt about that. But that Ballabay, Maracloon have to win. And Ballabay have to win as well because, I feel the only thing is you'd imagine within the last game, there might be the teams are playing at the end with Latin. Latin will want to beat them, obviously, it's a derby. But no, that's a jeopardy. Ballabay and Maracloon both have to win. Look, it's a 50-50 game. Ballabay, I was so impressed with them, and they're running from deep. Ryan Wiley, excellent. Now, they're still missing the main men. They're missing, Desi Ward and Drew Wiley, and they're big leaders to be missing. And Shane McGuinness, if he's not back, will be a big problem for them as well. But look, you're going to tip Maracloon to win at home, but I mean, that's a flick of a coin, you'd have to say. But I think Maracloon have to start creating some goal chances and taking them. Well, flip a coin, but I'll go with the home side. Do you want to go to the Inniskeen Latin? Because I think that's the big game of the weekend.
That's probably the big game. I'm just conscious you're thinking of your coffee around Maracloon as well. So yeah, whenever you come.
Justin O'Rourke's a Carrick man. We've adopted him in Maracloon. He won't spit in my coffee. No, he'll be all right.
You're right. The big one is Latin against Inniskeen. This is the top of the table. This is to get your semi-final spot and get you one step closer, obviously, to a county final. 2 unbeaten sides. And dare I say it, while all the focus is on the Clintibrett and the Scottstowns of this world, Inniskeen and Latin are going about their business very, very quietly.
I have to say about Inniskeen, they're doing this with no fuss. They're 3 wins from 3. And actually playing within themselves, not like just real business-like stuff, and I feel there's a couple of gears left in them. This big, massive talk about Tommy Durnan going and he's gone and all the rest of it. But they've moved Kieran McNulty in, who wouldn't be a traditional midfielder, but the way the game, he's just playing really well. He's so mobile, gets around the field, chips in with a score. We forget that Kieran McNulty can take frees. Kieran McNulty's great temperament for a score. So he's playing excellent. Andrew Woods' form has been exceptional. He has been brilliant. He's been right round the middle. He's ghosting in, getting goals, scored a couple of goals in the championship. His 2-point kicks have been big. Connor Jones going really well. That's a brother of Sean. Young fella, I would say he will be maybe getting a call up for a couple of opportunities in the county side. The way he's going, left and right footed, playing centre forward. So Shane Hannerty as well, a fellow who would have played a bit of county football over the years. He's their man marking job. But what I like about him as a man marker, he marks the marquee forward on one side. He probably will be on Aaron Mulligan on Sunday evening, who's been excellent for Latin. But he also gets on the ball a lot and contributes going forward. So he's a bit of an annoyance as a man marker because he asks questions the other way as well. So in this game, in great form. But so are Latin, and Latin are at home. And speaking to David Lennon, their manager, a proud Latin man, he's managed in Kingscourt, he's managed in Dunamine, he's managed all around. But I just feel there's a real sense that he's kind of like, well, he is at home, and you can see that about him. He's really enjoying being back with Latin. But Latin are playing a hungry type of game, Sean, where even the cornerback, they play that running game. We talk about the wind. It doesn't matter if they're against the wind. It's showed out with Maracloon. They outscored Maracloon with the wind in their face. A very strong breeze. Always breezy up there, that new development in Maracloon. And Latin made a mockery of it. Ran from defence. Thomas McPhillips marshalling that full back line. He's been absolutely brilliant. Kieran Duffy is just such an asset in a team. Can score. He was up around the midfield, up around the forwards, can do a man-marking job, and his experience is massive. Owen Duffy, his brother, has been injured. Not sure if he's back or not. But and then Aaron Mulligan, who when Maracloon beat Latin in the league semi-final, Aaron Mulligan wasn't playing, and he was just a big difference. He scored 9 points, I think, against Maracloon that day, and he can hit a 2-pointer as well. So I'm looking forward to seeing Aaron Mulligan and, Andrew Woods as forwards. And other lads chipping in as well. Stephen McCabe has been excellent for Latin. He's a really good footballer, a really good runner. I love that running game of Latin. Inniskeen, just getting the job done. This one is going to the wire because the prize is massive. If Inniskeen, either team wins this one, you'd have to fancy. If Inniskeen win it, they're definitely in the semi-final because they've won 3 from 3. This is their last game. And they will have that bye to look forward to, whether they want it or not. Talking to Kieran McNulty, he was actually at the Maracloon ladies match last week, and I was chatting to him. And they're really enjoying the football there in Inniskeen, and there's real freshness about them. And, John McEntee has been there for a while now, has won a championship with Clontibberet. There's a sense, I don't know whether they don't look like they're under pressure to win the championship. They actually look really composed and relaxed about it. And they have a lot of experience on the big day, and they've experienced disappointment. So they're taking this. They look like old hands at the championship, but there's still a long way to go. But the Latin at home. Oh, Sean, do I have to make a call on this one, or you're going to put me on the spot?
Are you going to plead the 6th or the 5th or whatever amendment to do plead by times? Are you?
Don't. You're not the first person to compare me to Donald Trump. Maybe I'll be impeached after this, but let's see. Look, a Latin in a scheme. Oh, jeez. I really don't know. I might go. I'm flicking a coin here. Maybe Latin at home. Maybe. But look, this could go either way. That is a 50-50 game, if ever there was one. I'll put you on the spot. What do you think?
I'm sitting on the fence. I'm going to call it a draw, but I'm calling a draw simply on the form of both teams. And this would be the real gauge, I suppose, when we see them. And it's interesting, you talk about even the style of plays that teams are adapting. Latin, and I've seen them a couple of times, it's a running game. It's a running game with pace. The Slevins are in there offering so much to them. You noted about Aaron Mulligan, Kieran Duffy coming from deep. Inniskeen, I'm getting the impression it's more the sort of, there is a running game, and it's a long ball game, the target man inside in the form of Andrew Woods. Connor Jones is in there as well. So it's even a contrast of styles and tactically now. And it's interesting when I was talking to Darren, I'd noted to him about the new rules, how he found them. And as a player, he's loving them. And he says maybe managers and coaches aren't loving it as much because they don't have as much control. And I think that's the thing about the games at the present moment that we'll remark about them. There isn't the same control. There's more expressiveness in the football. There's more what's going to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think, Jimmy McGuinness and these managers were kind of dubious about the new rules because they didn't have control. You can't control, and if your team, and you're coming up against a very strong attacking team, you don't have the control to stifle that. You have to trust your players. Also, the long kickouts to the midfield area. It's in the lap of the gods there, to in a certain extent. Obviously, you can work out breaking ball and try to have overlaps and to have extra numbers on whatever side you kick it. But teams are smart. It is, and that's the beauty of it. What's going to happen? The unknown. And you have to have the quality on the pitch. You have to have men who can win their individual battles. You have to have tactically, you have to have the kickouts where you go to the right spot, where you have the numbers for the breaking ball. And it is a lack of control, but the quality generally, that's the thing about this, John. The teams with the quality will be there at the end. You're not going to have it will be the teams particularly with the firepower, the 2 pointers. That's the teams who are going to be in the county final. There's no doubt about that. The thing about Inniskeen and Latin, both of them have 2-point options. Cian Mulligan in the goals can hit a 2-pointer as well, and also a fella who we didn't even mention from an Inniskeen point of view, who I think hasn't hit form yet, but will. He's a fantastic footballer. Is Sean Jones. When he and Inniskeen have him to add to it as well. We haven't even mentioned him. Cracking, one of the best forwards in the county. So, like. It's very, very interesting. But for me, it's the teams with that quality, because as you say, you have to trust your players, and the teams with the best players, they're the ones who obviously, I know that sounds, obviously that's the case,
Simplistic.
but with the new rules, it is the case. The manager's tactics haven't as much. You can't defend with 15 men behind the ball. You can't, because the rules won't let it. So there's an expressiveness. And as I say, the midfield is old school battles. That is going to be all make it really interesting. And when I go to Latin and Inniskeen and you say a draw, and you're right, that's what I'd be thinking as well. Maybe the home, it could go either way, but it's that quality teams. The team that has that X factor, the team that has that client who can hit a 2-pointer, like Rory Beggan, like Aaron Mulligan, like Sean, like Andrew Woods. They're the guys, they're the teams who are getting the results. And that's why that's why the new rules are brilliant, in my opinion. And obviously they're not for everyone, but most people would agree that they are pretty good.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think they've made the championship exciting, unpredictable, and maybe in some cases it is predictable, but it doesn't work out the way you were thinking it's going to work out. And we've already covered that and some of the results that we've had there. Northern Sound will be at all those games over the course of the weekend from a senior perspective, and bringing you all the reports and the reaction, which is important. You did touch on it, intermediate and junior championships, I know, are occurring this weekend as well. And obviously, we can't get round them all. You have to commend the fixtures committee, how they can put all these games together over a course of a weekend and space them out as much as possible. But just very briefly, as always, an intermediate in Group 1. It's Dunamine out top, 3 wins, 6 points. Carrickmacross on 4, the Hamlet on 2, Drumhowen and Tome still awaiting their first points. And interesting is Drumhowen has taken on the Hamlet. So a win for the Hamlet this weekend should be enough to be seeing them through to the next round, and Drumhowen maybe in a bit of difficulty in that group. Carrickmacross against Dunamine, and that's a top of the table sort of effective clash there as well, a bit who's going to maybe claim the semi-final spot. In the other group, and this is the real group of death, Blaney on 5, Killanny on 3, Clonus on 2, Harps on 1, Holland on 1, and it's Harps taking on Killanny, Clonus taking on Castle Blaney. And again, results this weekend will still not determine what the last weekend's going to bring. And that's always been intermediate football in Monaghan.
Yeah. Dunamine putting their league form behind, and as I mentioned, Rory Wood said he reckoned Dunamine would have a shout in this championship, and it's proven that. Yeah, you're right about Group 2. It's the most interesting group. Killanny, Monaghan Harps is a big one this weekend. Massive. Monaghan Harps are on 1 point. Killanny are on 3. Both have 2 games played. Blaney playing Clonus in the league there during the week, in the refix game, and they're playing again in the championship now. And Clonus are on 2 draws, actually. So they haven't been beaten yet, but they're on 2 points. I think Blaney are in great shape there. A team that's, look, they're getting on, they're building, they don't, a lot of young lads playing, but they're heading in the right direction. There's no doubt about it. Talking to Blaney people, and they would say that, especially working a lot of work into their underage now, something that they mightn't have done back in the glory days, and realise, like Scottstown had to rebuild as well in the noughties. You know, the juveniles is massive, and bringing that conveyor belt of a few players every year. But Killarney and Monaghan Harps is the game of the weekend in that for me, because I feel whoever wins that one will go second in the group.
Yeah, and that's what it's looking like. Just briefly in the junior, and again on the groupings, it's Emmy Vale, as expected, 2 from 2 out in top, 4 points. And then every team behind them, Sean's, Curran, Scotchtown, Killeven, all on 2 points. They've all been taking results of each other. And a special mention to Killeven. Nobody seen that one coming, getting that result over Curran. Curran are out this weekend against Emmy Vale. Curran, of course, had the win on the first weekend, so they did. So Scotchtown taking on Sean. So again, it's 4 teams out of the 5 that go through, because they all go to quarterfinals in junior. Obviously, there's no relegation. So again, there's still plenty to play for in that section. But you're looking at a team possibly not going any further in the championship, and they could be still sitting on 2 points.
Yeah, I just say Sean is dipped out there, but I couldn't hear something like that. But definitely, I'm looking at Group 1 here in front of me, and obviously, as we said, Emmy Vale out in front, and Sean's, Curran, Scotstown, and Killeven all on 2 points. So
Yeah,
I mean, you know, what can you say about that? But look, we're looking at Emmy Vale. Because the Emmy Vale obviously top, doing, you know, living up to their favourites tag. Killeven have a bye this weekend, so it's Scotstown and Sean McDermott's, Emmy Vale and Curran. Well, look, Emmy Vale are at home. Curran doing well, but that's going to be a tough one for Curran. Scotstown and Sean McDermott's. Sean's probably will be happy with the form, but Scotstown are a tough team. Very, very tough team. And you know, getting to a point, you'd be expecting to make a semi-final, but I'm going to think Sean's probably slight favourites for that one. So it's about Emmy Vale, but really, the interest now is who comes second, because they're all chomping it at the bit and biting each other there to see who can make that.
absolutely. And what happens is the crossover then, that it's going to be first playing fourth and second playing third, and you get a home quarter final for yourself in that as well. So placings is very important, obviously, even in the junior groups. Interesting matchup with Scotchtown there. Very good in the league, had a good opening game in the championship, but I know a number of the players now have been called up to the senior panel owing to the injuries that Scotchtown seniors have had then as well. So sometimes that can have an effect on the dynamic of the team. And in the other group, it's Éire Óg on 4, it's Blackhill on 3, Rock on 3, Ahbog on 2, and Orem still awaiting their first points. It's more or less done and dusted maybe in this group in regards to who's going to go through to the quarterfinals. But again, it's just the placings that they're playing for there as well. This weekend, we'll see Blackhill taking on Ahbog, and it's Rockcurry up against Éire Óg. So a couple of nice fixtures there also to look forward to as well. And again, as you said at the very start of this podcast, Fergal, why we might not always get to these junior and intermediate games and the focus is on the senior. These junior games are just as big for these clubs as anything that's being played at the higher levels.
Well, look, I mean, one of these, at least one, maybe 2 of these clubs are going to be intermediate next year, and you know, Éire Óg are looking good, doing great work there in Éire Óg. Your own club there, Rockcurry, are going to be playing them at the weekend at home. Rockcurry are at home, so Rockcurry are on 3 points, and Blackhill are on 3 points. Like Blackhill would have had good runs in the past in Ulster in matches as well. Like, you know, all these teams, you know, are going places in the sense, you know, to win your title, it's very hard to win any competition. It's very hard to be number one in anything. And you know, one of these teams, Éire Óg are in good shape, and I feel Éire Óg will have been disappointed last year to lose that junior final, and I think they've been using that as an incentive to try and right that wrong in a sense in their view. But they're going to come up against a tough team in Emmy Vale. Blackhill, Rockcurry, big shout in that group as well, massive shout. And Rockcurry coming up against Éire Óg, that's a massive game at the weekend. Blackhill against Ahbog, and that could go either way as well. It's seriously competitive, like the like the intermediate championship. And there's no coincidence, Sean, that our junior and intermediate champions are generally one of the favourites for Ulster as well.
Whenever they do get out of the county, but they've a lot to do before they even can consider talk about provincial competitions. Fergal, it's been a joy as always. I think you'll be safe to walk around the county for another week, so you will. On
The bullets are getting closer all the time.
You're dodging. I know you're good at dodging. So you are. That is another episode of the Monaghan Way. As I noted, it's episode 17. We'll have the weekend passes by. We'll be out and about. We'll be covering those fixtures for you. And again, keep an eye on Northern Side on the website and indeed the sports programs over the course of the weekend for reports and reaction. And we'll be back next week. And again, we'll be putting it to Fergal. Well, how do those predictions stand by for him? And don't forget, as always, you can check in on the Monaghan Way podcast on all your streaming platforms, YouTube, Apple, Spotify, or anywhere else that you pick them up.